Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Atomic Ambition, the podcast, with me, Paul, your host. Now, today, I'm going to explore what I think is a very interesting subject and a very interesting sort of book with you. Now, the book I'm exploring with you today is not what I would class as a traditional self-improvement, self-help book. But it is a book which I think you will find, if you're like me, you will find it intriguing, just like I found it intriguing. And it's a book that will help you understand people just a little bit better. Now, like I said, it's not a traditional self-help book or self-improvement book. Written by a gentleman called Jon Ronson. It's called The Psychopath Test. Okay, if any of you are fans of movies, Jon Ronson also wrote, as you can see there, The Men Who Stare at Goats, which became a movie starring George Clooney. And it's about crazy people in the CIA. So he's written some very interesting books and stories in his time. This book is called The Psychopath Test. And in this book, the author, Jon Ronson, what he does is he goes deep into what he calls the industry of madness, the industry of psychopathy and things like that, to try to understand it. One of the key things that Jon describes in this book is the psychopath test. How can you test whether somebody is a psychopath? Now, I'm sure clinically and from a sort of a technical perspective, it's a very detailed test, and you probably need to be well trained in psychiatry. You need to be a psychologist to perform the test. But I found it really interesting because in the book, what the author Jon does is he describes some. I'm not sure whether all of them, but he describes a lot of the traits that you might find within a psychopath. And that is what I found really, really interesting and intriguing. Because understanding the traits of a psychopath and psychopathy, I think, is a really severe mental illness. When you think of psychopathy, you tend to think of those mass murderers who go around sort of stabbing people. And Hollywood makes lots of movies about psychopaths killing people with knives. Things like that. That's what you tend to think about when it comes to psychopathy and psychopaths. But not everybody is a psychopath to that degree, to that sort of depth, where they're clinically insane and should be locked up and the key should be thrown away. It's interesting to know that a lot of the traits of a psychopath can be found within many of us today, you and me included. Okay. Now, I couldn't really analyze myself. I'm sure other people could. But one of the things that really happened to me when I read this book for the very first time was I began to notice some traits and some habits of some people I was working with. That I'm not saying they were psychopaths, but certainly some of the traits that were described in the book I could see in people. I'd never seen it before, or if I had seen it before, I didn't understand it. But then I started thinking, oh my God, yeah, this person does that. This person does that, and that. Oh my God, they've met 3 criteria for being a psychopath. Okay, the criteria is quite large, but they've met 3 of the criteria for being a psychopath. And I thought, wow, maybe this does help describe why they do the things that they do. It helps me. I think it helped me understand their behaviors a little bit better. Which, if you're wanting to understand people and perhaps even influence people, then honestly, the psychopath test. I'm sure there are other books. There are probably more clinical books of clinical analysis of the psychopath test. It's an official test. It was created by a Dr. Robert D. Hare. Dr. Robert Hare basically is a Canadian psychologist, a clinical psychologist. He created this test. And like I said, it's quite a detailed, long test, and you have, I think to become a clinically classed as a psychopath, you have to meet a lot of these criteria. So just meeting 3 of them is probably not that, bad. I hope not, anyway. But yeah, so this is why this book I think was really intriguing to me, because once you understand some of these traits of a psychopath, you actually start to see it everywhere. Okay, in your colleagues at work, in politicians, in your boss, the chief executives, and the higher ups in your organization. You actually see traits of psychopathy everywhere. And I think when you spot it and you understand it, it helps you understand why that person behaves in the way that they do. Obviously that is a crucial, I think, for helping you. But obviously, if you can have an insight into why is that person behaving in the way that they do, then you have a little bit of a greater understanding of that person, and you're possibly more likely to be able to sort of influence and persuade that person. That's why I think this is a really great book, okay, to go out, buy and read. It's actually quite a hilarious book as well. Okay, so now some of the traits of a psychopath are probably pretty well known. A lack of empathy. If you can't empathize with people, that is one of the simple traits of being a psychopath. But not everybody who lacks empathy is a psychopath. It's just one of the traits. But things like fearlessness, not having fear of many things, being manipulative, I think those, being manipulative coupled with zero empathy, I think they go together quite well in terms of, some of the people you can think of right now. I'm sure you can think of some people you've known and worked with in your lives who had zero empathy and were quite manipulative. Yeah. So there you go. I really encourage you to take a look at this book. I'm thinking that there's still one person from my past, a person I worked with, who, until I read this book, I didn't really understand that person. And that now I think I understand that person. This person, I don't know, this person was superficially charmed. The charm was skin deep. This person had what I would consider to be a larger sense of self-worth than what they really were. I wouldn't say this person was a pathological liar, for example, but I think there was certain manipulative traits, and this person didn't seem to feel remorse or guilt afterwards either. So there was this, lack of empathy as well with this person. And honestly, I read this book and I felt for the first time I understood this person so well just by noticing these traits. I'm not sure what you can do with it. Obviously, if you want to influence and persuade people, then I'm sure you can take these sort of traits that are written about and spoken about in the test, the psychopath test, and you can use them to your advantage if you want to. But really, I see this book as a social experiment. Encourage your friends to buy and read this book, and they can analyze you. They can tell you whether or not you have any of these psychopathic tendencies. And I think you will notice some of these tendencies in other people as well. Whether you're close friends, colleagues, extended sort of community, you'll start to see these traits and, change your view about some people. I know I certainly did as well. I hope I am not a psychopath. I don't know. Well, I do know I'm not a psychopath. But I hope I don't have too many of these traits of being a psychopath. Maybe you guys can tell me. Am I a psychopath? Yes or no? I hope the answer is no. But anyway, John Ronson, The Psychopath Test. Great book. Highly recommend it. It's an hilarious read. And like I said, it's not a traditional self-help, self-improvement book. But the thing that it talks about, the psychopathic sort of traits, I think knowledge of those can help you guys in everyday life, especially when you're dealing with people. So go out and buy the book, The Psychopath Test, and I'll see you guys next week.